15th year, but I will tell you that I have been working in the nonprofit area, both from individual organizations, including corporate nonprofits from many large corporations for over 30 years. So I have an experience in this, and certainly since Hurricane Charlie down here and nonprofits, I've been working with many of them, and including a couple of them just recently with their applications for the SBA disaster loan, all right, which is not the bridge loan, because nonprofits are not allowed to participate in the bridge loan, but in the SBA disaster loan function. And I would like to say that the loan documentation in nonprofits are corporations, so they fulfill the same documentation as would a for-profit organization. And I would also mention, because this has been an issue that has come up a few times, that the documentation, if you are sending it in to the consultants, whether it's, if you're in Charlotte County, it would come to me, because that's where I am in Charlotte County. Certainly it would go down to Florida Gulf Coast University if you're in Lee County, or Collier County and Henry Glades, it would go into that FGCU center. But I would suggest you make those documents individual when you put them in your email. Do not put all the documents together in one email, so that it makes it more difficult to open them and to separate the documents for the review committee, and certainly for the SBA review, and for the banking people who would want to look at these. So with that, LaShawn, we can get to the questions. I'll let you go one by one and repeat what the questions are.
Very good. All right. So first of all, to let everyone know that there will be a recording available. If you're on our mailing list, it'll go out to everyone this Thursday at 3:00 p.m. So first question we have here from Cheryl Sukup: is there disaster relief loan available for nonprofits that do not have employees?
Yes. And you do not have to have employees to get a loan for your nonprofit. It's going to be based on what your revenues are. And remember, revenues and sales are the monies that are coming in and contributions to your nonprofit. So they're looking at total gross revenues coming in and what your issues are. You still have to run as a corporation, so you do not, I repeat, do not have to have employees to fulfill the application for that funding.
Cheryl, is that question clear enough for you? Okay. I have a question from Matt. Matt says he has two questions. I only see one. The first one: when we have a list of banks that will handle the CARES Act funding?
Well, banks are involved in this process, certainly, and that is an option that you do have, that they will allow you to do that. They have the information on where to send information and how you are to do it. You certainly can go to the banks. The Small Business Development Center has always been set up as the focal point for disaster relief in Florida here, and we've always functioned that way, but I think they're trying to get more of the financial institutions involved in order to handle the quantity. So to answer your question, certainly you can go to your banks that are available for doing this. They will have access to the same documentation and be able to help as well.
Right. So am I clear when it comes to the CARES Act that any bank is able to participate or to help with that lending? Is that correct?
Well, if you say any bank, there may be some banks that are not up to par with this, or their employees have gone home and maybe they're not staffed. They should be able to handle that type of thing. Remember this too, that we have been set up to work with disasters and to work with the relief packages here. So we have experience. In the past, the banks haven't done this. Our Small Business Development Center works through a specific process, and it will go to Florida First Capital in Tallahassee. That's where our funding will go to. And they, of course, are doling out the funds, which would be an ACH or a direct payment to your bank account. All right, so that's what's changed. It used to be that the closing documents would come to you and we'd have to work with you to get you the check. but now they're going to do direct deposits. So my answer to that is I'm hoping the banks would be able to do it. Ask your bank though. Certainly you can come back to us and we'd be glad to help you.
Right. So I have a question, two questions from Kay Lewis asking, number one, can you walk an NPO through the process of applying for a loan?
Well, certainly, the application, what we have done here when people call in, we supply them with the website and in many cases with the actual application. There is an option for the SBA to either make hard copies and send them to us for review, which I suggest because we get a chance to look at it. Or you can go online, fill out the application and download your documents directly to them. I must admit that there have been issues over the last couple of weeks with many of my clients having difficulty with the online application. It doesn't mean that it's not functional. It just means that they personally have a problem, in which case I ask them to send us the individual documents. We'll review them. And in many cases, we will package that and send it in for them through our review committee and then to the bank for closing documents.
Mm-hmm. Pete, I think that it's important to speak to them that working with the SBDC, we take them through the process step by step, because in the past there was an appeals process and right now there isn't. So any actual issues that they have, or if they're not filling it out completely, could hurt them.
Right. And that's true. The appeals process does not exist. So you have to get it right the first time. That's why we are so careful looking at this. So we're getting the information in the website to the individual, but then we're having them get the actual documents to us so we can review each of those documents. And certainly that process, and it's listed on there, but I can rattle off the documents for you. There are 2 years of business tax returns and 2 years of personal tax returns. You have your business tax receipt, you have your driver's license front and back, all right? Support information would also include a letter if you're applying under certain circumstances or extenuating circumstances. You can write a brief letter, and I would say always keep it to a page to attach to your application, all right? In which case they would get an idea of exactly what your situation is. That material, and of course, part of the forms that you would have if you have employees would also go with that application, which we would review. Now, we would tell you if you're missing something or there's something really necessary in there. But in those cases, we may ask you to send us a document again. Many times we'll print it out and make the correction for you and then send it in. But we will be on top of that. And I'm sure the banks will help as well in that particular regard. Sending it in, we take only a couple of days to review that before we move things along. And the timing for review from Florida First Capital is still up in the air. I can only tell you at this point that in the past for emergency bridge loan or for these bridge loans, it could take 3 to 5 weeks. And because there's so many people right now, they really don't have a good estimate of how much time before you get your closing documents or your money at the end.
So Kay Lewis's follow-up question was, do we initiate contact with the bank or with the SBDC, for example?
Well, you have a choice. You can go either way. You can go through the SBDC. If you don't happen to be in the 5 counties that Florida Gulf Coast University handles, you would find that Small Business Development Center in your county. USF, for example, is in Sarasota County. DeSoto is USF too, but we do handle DeSoto, and I have many clients personally from DeSoto County and Northport, for example, because they're closer to us. But you would make those contacts, and certainly for me in Charlotte County, for those of people that are listening from Charlotte County, I can be contacted on pkeating@fgcu.edu. It's usually the first initial, first name, and then my last name, and then @fgcu.edu. And or call. You could certainly, we don't have my office. Obviously, I'm not working from the office anymore. None of us at the university are. But you you could give, you will get phone numbers and everything, and I will definitely give you a call back if you happen to be in the county, and certainly people from FGCU will as well. Going into the banks, again, you may be concerned about getting out and doing face-to-face. So that is another consideration that you have to take in hand here to make sure that you're being safe while most people are trying to stay at home right now.
All right. Matt's looking for some clarity. He's saying it's unclear if an organization is able to get the disaster loan and the CARES Act forgivable loan.
Well, right now, the CARES Act loan is the SBA 7A loan. It's all the same application at this particular point. And that's the information we have. I don't have any separate application or anything for the CARES Act. It all goes underneath the SBA disaster loan application.
Okay. So let me go to this next question. Okay. What are the parameters of transferring a loan for payroll into a grant?
We do not have that information in hand at this point. It is unclear to us exactly what is going to be done with regard to, and I'll use the term forgiveness or turning it into a grant. We just do not have that information at hand at this point, how that's going to be handled. There has been a lot of talk about doing that, but right now we do not. I would impart one piece of information I told LaShawn about. It may not apply to anyone here at this point, but there are different organizations coming out with grants right now. And there's one that's the Restaurant Association I heard of just this morning. And the acronym for it, or the website, is RERF.US. And they're giving out grants to every restaurant that wants to apply for their employees only and for their wages. And I'm not sure, they don't talk about the process or how it will be done. And I think that's the issue here with a lot of what's going on. We know our process, but with regard to the CARES Act and payment for employees, we don't have that process at this point. That's very clear of what they're going to do to refund or provide monies that way. We can only speak to the SBA loan, and it is a loan at 3.75%. And should they put that process into place, we'd be the first ones to come out and to tell everyone about it.
Right. Liz Donnelly is asking if you can go over the size standards relevant to the CARES Act. It appears that they're employee standards or annual revenue standards based on the NAICS codes.
Well, you know, it's been difficult to figure out exactly how much and what the sizes are going to be. And frankly, it just goes from an employee point of view, that you have to have so many employees. And I don't think there's, at this particular point, I wouldn't dissuade anyone from applying for it, regardless of the size of their nonprofit. They can only say no, but I would certainly say you should apply rather than wait to do it based on this, because we're not clear on it either. And that's a little unfortunate right now, but and we've been trying to find out more specific information about this process, but it's been a little difficult for us as well.
So we have a NPO who's already applied for an SBA disaster loan prior to the CARES Act being passed. Does this nonprofit have to apply again through a bank to take advantage of the CARES Act?
No, they have applied for the SBA disaster loan. That's what is necessary. They don't have to apply again. There have been so many changes and so much new information every week. It's confusing that way, but the SBA loan application hasn't changed. It's the same application. So they have applied. It will be fine.
Okay, all right. And when you say fine, will it just automatically be noted as the CARES Act?
It's all part of the same act, correct?
Okay.
It's an SBA loan for that reason, right?
All right, great. Lydia's asking, can organizations receive both the disaster loan and the CARES forgivable loan?
Whether they are different loans is a good question. It may be part of the same loan. And we're not sure about that. We haven't heard that process at this point, whether it's going to be incorporated into the same loan. Right now, the SBA loan is the SBA loan. There is no second loan out there.
So Charby 1998 is asking, does this process work the same for credit unions?
I'm not sure I understand that.
Yeah, I guess the question, and Char, if you need to re-ask, let me know, or if you want to talk, you can unmute and ask the question. In other words, my thinking is that they are asking, could they go to a credit union to apply instead of a traditional bank?
Not to my knowledge. I don't think the credit unions are involved in the actual application process. I mean, and it doesn't mean they can't be, I suppose. I thought he was asking more about, you can pay debt back with this loan, you can pay credit card debt back, but no, I don't know of any credit unions that are involved with this. The only credit union, the Suncoast Credit Union is, they do have loans available at the Suncoast Credit Union. I know that. And LaShawn, you remember we had Kim on a week ago or so talking about their loan package.
Is it correct that the costs associated with the loan can't occur before the loan origination date? This is from Kay Lewis.
Well, the interest rate's going to start on the day that it's approved, when closing documents are all sent in and the money has been issued. That's the date that interest rates will begin.
Could you say that again, Pete?
When someone applies, they applied, and it's been that way in the past. When my experience with the disaster loans, that it's the interest rates only begin when all the documents have been approved and the money has been transferred to the recipient. There will be payment coupons that are included in the closing documents, and the banks will go over, and we certainly have done the same thing, go over the process for repaying the loan. And but those interest rates only begin upon transference of the monies.
Right. Okay. Liz Donnelly is asking, is there a set amount of funds available? I think the question here is what is available in the Florida Bridge loan, which is nonprofit, and CARES Act.
Yeah, available.
So what's available?
Yeah, I mean, there are certainly funds. This is again a nonprofit's a corporation, so there are funds. I've worked with nonprofits that are $600 million a year in revenues coming in the door, and ones that are only a few thousand. So the loan is going to be based on the organization's ability to repay. They're going to look at their financial standing and what their needs are as to how much money. So organizations have to be careful about what they're asking for, how much money they would really need to maintain their operations, pay their debts, pay their vendors, pay their employees, and keeping them operational. They have to be very careful about the amount that they're going to ask for. Certainly, the bank is only going to approve that amount of money that is going to meet those needs. They're not going to give them more money than that. Very similar to the for-profit end of it. I mean, even in a bridge loan type of thing, there were $50,000, but you had extenuating circumstances for $100,000. Well, if you're making $1 million a year, you can certainly apply for the $100,000. But if you're only making $20,000 a year, there's no way they're even going to give you 50, maybe. So you have to be very careful on the amount that you're asking for. It should be realistic.
Michelle is asking, is there a fee for having the SBDC help with filing for loans?
The Small Business Development Center has always been and will continue to be a no-cost service to businesses and to individuals at this point. And that's the way we have worked on a normal basis with our business counseling. And that's the way we are working here. There is no residual fees or anything coming to us as a result of our efforts to help people with these loans.
Mhm. Colleen, hi Colleen, is clarifying about options for 501c6s organizations.
Well, the 501c6, and you're looking now at educational institutions, primarily in that particular category and others, and they still are nonprofit organizations. There have been no restrictions regarding the classifications, whether it's a C6 or a C4, and there are 20 different classifications for organizations under the nonprofit status. So right now, it's all nonprofits are allowed to apply.
Mhm. All righty. Jim Reynolds is saying, if you have an existing SBA loan, can you apply for another loan?
Well, that's all going to be based on ability to repay. The debt to income ratio type of situation is going to be part of that. And it depends on where you are in repaying the loan. There is no restriction for getting this type of loan to help in your business because of the extenuating circumstances, because the loan that you have is part of your debt, and this loan is allowed to pay back debt. And I'll give him the example that if you were to take out a bridge loan, and nonprofits can't do that, but if you were to take out a bridge loan, can't pay it back in a year, you can get a federal disaster loan and pay back the bridge loan. And then get obviously a lower interest rate. And so I would say to him that he should apply for it, even though he has an existing SBA loan, because that's debt, and certainly this loan is part of paying back debt.
So Dottie is saying, if the loan is to keep all employees on board, do staff resignations during the time frame affect the loan or the loan forgiveness?
There is a period of time in the materials that we have received that you're able to hire back employees up to June 30th, I believe it is. But I would also say that this money is not only for paying employees, it's for paying other debts and administrative costs and other things that are necessary to keep the business going. So it's not just for employees here, this loan.
Okay. Donna is trying to get clarity about the options for 501c6s versus 501c3s. What is actually available?
I don't think there's any difference at this point. I mean, it's all going to be based on the organization, the nonprofit's organization needs. Whether they're a 6 or a 3, they're not making any difference between them. They're both nonprofit organizations, both registered with the federal government. And I would say this, if your nonprofit doesn't have a 501c3 determination letter, you're not a nonprofit. Just because the state of Florida gave you nonprofit status. You have to be registered with the IRS, with the federal government, to be a bona fide nonprofit organization. And again, I see no difference here between the different classifications. They're all nonprofits right now.
Lydia wants to confirm that past SBA loans are automatically deferred. And I'm not clear about that. Or do you have to specifically request a deferral?
Well, I would always say that you have to go in and request any change in your status with regard to an existing loan. I would highly recommend that before you assume anything. You have to make sure that they will approve if there is going to be a deferral or not. Don't take it for granted that they will because you've read it somewhere or heard it on the radio or the TV. You must connect with them and ask that question specifically for your case.
Okay. So Liz Donnelly was wondering, is there a certain amount of dollars available? Is there a limit on a certain amount of dollar amount for Florida applicants?
Well, with the SBA disaster loans up to $2 million. That's the limit at this point that we have heard. And it doesn't change whether you are a for-profit or nonprofit right now.
Lauren says, if you have furloughed employees and want to get the funds to hire them back, is there any additional, or are there any additional steps to take?
Not that I know of at this point. There hasn't been any process put in place for doing that or saying whether one is going to be used for the other. I know a lot of these individual questions haven't been answered by the government, and we'd like to know some of that as well. And I would also add that right now, I also noticed that there's $10 million for eligible nonprofits. So there is a total bucket for all nonprofits. So if your nonprofit is in need, I wouldn't hesitate to fill out the applications and getting them in. You certainly want to take advantage of what monies may be available for all nonprofits at this point.
Alrighty. Did I ask if you have furlough? Yes, I did. Okay. John Talmadge from the Lee County Economic Development Office does have some clarity regarding lenders. John, if you would like to unmute yourself to provide us with that information, that would be helpful. John? Okay, well, we'll just go to the next question while he's waiting. Let's see here if I can find him. I'll go to the next question and I'll try to find him and unmute. Are these loans just for NPOs with employees? You may have answered that before.
Yeah, right. No, they're not.
Okay. If we have an existing loan, do we need to make a new application to get more money?
Yes, there has to be a separate application for this disaster loan.
Alrighty. Kay Lewis, our interpretation is that expenses for payroll, rent, etc., that are eligible for the CARES Act forgivable loans cannot occur until the loan origination date. And she's sorry for not being clearer earlier.
I'm not sure I understand what she's asking.
Okay, if
She just makes a comment.
Okay, I'll find her as well and try to, Kay Lewis, can you unmute yourself so that you can have a conversation with Pete?
Sure can. Pete, I was told that, yeah, I was told that we could not get reimbursed for expenses that occurred prior to the loan origination date. That's what I'm trying to understand.
Oh, I see what you're saying, prior to the origination date.
Correct.
Actually, they have a date on there from March 1st, I guess. I think that's the date of this. When this
So are you
started.
indicating expenses from March 1st forward may be eligible?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, thank you. That was unclear, thank you.
Oh, so when you say origination date, I think of the origination loan, but you're talking about the origination of the disaster.
No, I'm talking about the origination of the loan.
Oh, okay.
No, and that's where my reading of it said, gee, I can't get reimbursed for any expenses until I, prior to the origination of the loan. And that's what I'm just trying to discern.
Okay, yeah, all right.
Thank you, Kay Lewis. If you can remute, that would be helpful. So Kate is saying they're a 501c3 with 90% of their funding is from their thrift store, which is currently closed. Do we have to bring back employees who have been put on furlough in order to be eligible for the amount that may or may not be forgiven?
Well, they would certainly, and at this point, they're not asking anyone to start up business again. To bring back employees. They're just telling everyone to stay at home. So I'm not sure whether that's not going to be a requirement at this particular point until it's safe for people to go back to work. But filling out the loan application, I think they have to work from this point on and look at what their needs are right now. If they're not paying their employees, even though they're at home, then of course that would not be part of the need at this point. A lot of businesses have furloughed employees, so they're not paying those expenses at this particular point. They're going to have to work off of what their need is right now, is what I'm saying, not bringing people back to work. Because right now there is no work. I mean, you can't just bring them back into the facility. A lot of companies are paying employees out of their own pocket, and that of course would constitute their need at this point, but some businesses can afford to do that. So work on the basis of what you are paying out now. And I would say that I would not be bringing back employees at this point.
Barbara is asking, are the closing costs for the loans determined by the bank? And has there been a cap put on closing costs?
There have not been closing costs for this application. It's just documentation at this point.
Ready. Cheryl Sukup, there was a portal with the sign-in available when she first submitted the application. You could view the status of the loan on that portal. However, it appears that the option has disappeared. She'd like to know, how does she get some type of understanding of the status of her loan?
And unfortunately, I don't know. And I know they have taken it off and they've changed the portal. People have had difficulties with their so-called verification codes and everything. And I don't really know how she can get that verification online.
So Cheryl, I know that you work with us closely, and I'd like for you to send me privately who you're working with, and I can pose that question to them. And as soon as we get better information available, we can reach out to you to give you an individual answer. All right. Okay. John thinks that he's figured out how to unmute. John, could you go ahead and unmute? I can't find you. Hello.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
So as far as the CARE Act is concerned, and I'll give you an example.
John, just in case some people missed it, if you can introduce yourself so they know who we're talking to.
I'm sorry, this is John Talmadge. I'm the Director of the Lee County Economic Development Office. So as far as the CARE Act is concerned, and I'll give you a small restaurant example, the Island Pizza will apply for a bridge loan to pay for general operating costs, such as trash pickup and insurance for drivers and things like that, things that it might be eligible for. They'll apply for a CARE Act loan to pay for the rent and the payroll and the utilities, and then it'll apply for an SBA loan to take out the bridge loan and the CARE Act loan, because the bridge loan, the SBA disaster recovery loan is a 30-year loan. The CARE Act loan is a 10-year loan. And then that portion of the rent and payroll that is maintained for the 8-week period will be forgiven by the bank. The bank needs to be an approved 7A lender. Not all banks are approved 7A lenders, but there's a quick process for becoming approved. If you're not, most banks are approved. And so that's really the distinction. The CARE Act is for C3s only at this point, not C6s, and it's for your rent, your interest on your mortgage, your utility, and your payroll. You can bring furloughed workers back onto your payroll without penalty, but they'll take they'll take the average payroll for the previous 12 months, monthly payroll, and then they'll subtract that from what your current payroll is to deem what you're eligible for. And once you have those three numbers, aggregated, you can borrow up to 2.5 times that total number, and that becomes the total loan amount. Does that help?
I think so.
John, I have a question for you while you're on the line here. You have that separate application for the CARE Act?
The applications will be your 7A application.
It's the same
originated by the bank, but they have not been distributed yet, nor has guidance from their regulators been distributed yet as well.
Yeah, and all we have heard at this point is that the application, the 7A, is the same type of application, if not the same requirements as the current SBA Disaster Act.
It's the same application at this point.
Yeah.
But there'll be some differences on, you don't have to show the ability to repay in the same ways you do with the SBA loan, and you don't have to show, there's something that have eased some of the standards that for you to qualify.
Yeah.
Also, someone asked about the closing fees. The SBA will pay the bank a per transaction fee, so there's not a fee or charge to the consumer.
No, there's never been that type of charge. The other issue with the C6 is, I know there are education and everything like that. And you were saying just 501c3s, but there are almost 20 different classifications for nonprofit organizations. But the government hasn't really made a distinction at this point. Well, or to say why an individual classification cannot be allowed to apply for this if they're a bona fide nonprofit.
One of the things that we were going back and forth with the chambers over the weekend, one of the distinctions that they seem to have made in the CARE Act was that the SBA disaster recovery loan is eligible for all not-for-profits.
Right,
They
exactly.
made that. And the other thing is that in the SBA Disaster Recovery Act, once you're approved, you can draw down $10,000 for payroll protection. That becomes a grant.
Right. It does. That $10,000 is going to be issued
Within 3 days.
Within 3 days. Yes. Right. Okay. Good.
Right. And someone's asking, is it possible to get the information the speaker just stated? The most up-to-date information that we have, W. Rodriguez, will also go out in that Thursday newsletter. So there's a lot of information coming out and being compiled. We're sticking it on our website. But you know, things change, like they changed for the bridge loan. So on Thursday, all of the current information that we have up to this date will be sent out in the newsletter.
So Sean, can I just also say that in partnership with the SBDC and 211 and Career Source, we'll be standing up a call center at the Lee County's Emergency Operations Center starting Wednesday or Thursday that will make this information available. And we've created a tool that will go live later on this week on how all these programs connect to one another.
And I love that, John. Are you able to send that to me, or either have Tatum send that to me so that we can have that information to share?
Absolutely. I sent to Lois over the weekend.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you. She did send me like 6 emails this morning, so it might be in there somewhere. I've made it to like 2 or 3 of them. Okay. Liz, go ahead and send me your email, and Dottie is saying thank you so much. All of that information would be helpful. All right. I think that I've answered most of the questions here. Does anyone else have a question? Okay. Put your emails in the chat if you are not sure if you're on the list, and thank you. And I will make sure that you're added to the list. All righty. Okay, great. LaShawn and Peter, Colleen, thank you very much. She's saying thank you. And I do see all of the emails coming through, and I will have a record of them. I would like to ask if there are any additional questions. Okay, I want to make sure that everyone's questions get answered. If you do, you'll see the URL right above my head, fsbdcswiffle.org. There is a red link on that webpage that says sign up for a one-on-one consultation. If you have additional questions, hit that button, and just be really specific about your questions so we can make sure that you're getting to the right consultant. We have about 20 consultants on staff, and right now 8 to 10 of them are dedicated to working on these loans right now. So when you sign up for wanting to have a consultation, put in there, I'm a nonprofit looking for assistance with the loan, so that you'll be patched through to the right person. It's taking us about 48 hours right now to make sure that a consultant will be able to answer you back, but we're moving as quickly as possible, and every single one of the questions will be answered. And virtual appointments like we're doing right now are available with Pete or anybody else on our staff. Alrighty, I have the emails. C. Kroger is saying thank you so much, Pete, and is asking for you to contact him. I think I have all of the emails here. They will be added. Hopefully this information was helpful to you. As more information comes out, we will make sure to distribute them. Again, instead of doing monthly updates, we're doing weekly updates on Thursdays. Enjoy your days, take care of yourselves, and we are here to serve you. Thank you.
Thank you, LaShawn.
Thank you.